All right, everybody, welcome to Talkin Investing. You're here with Tom and George. Hello, George.
Hello.
So this week faded on us. This was an almost all red day for the Bitcoin miners. Bitcoin was down a little bit. We're very sideways on the week, so we're going to go through all of that. We got some Fed news. We got some geopolitical news. We got all our weekly, monthly, yearly updates. We got everything, and we got a lot of companies adopting Bitcoin. So I'm going to go through all of those because this list just keeps growing and growing. So, Sourmelon Gaming said, Tom, your mic sounds phenomenal. Thank you very much. I bought a new mic because that last mic failed on us last Friday, and that was an outrage. So I bought a new one and a Yeti, something. I don't really know anything about it.
Oh, you bought a blue Yeti?
A blue Yeti, yeah. But
Nice.
interestingly, it's black. But it was called the Blue Yeti. So I'm not
That's
sure.
really funny.
I don't know why that is. I don't make the rules. But YouTube does. So smash the like button if you would. The thumbs up, the like button. We need our 100 likes, please. It helps us. So much appreciated. Welcome to all. I see a bunch of members in the chat. So welcome. And of course, welcome to our subscribers as well. And if you're new here, we talk about Bitcoin, the Bitcoin miners, and the world. We're live every Friday afternoon. And for members, we are live every Tuesday after the market closes. So welcome, everybody. All right. We got the new mic.
I'll tell you what, though, Tom, I'm excited about this thing called Bitcoin.
Let's hear it. Let's hear your thoughts.
Again, remember when I said this 2 years ago? I said this when we were less than $50,000. I said, remember, the elites want what you can't have. And Bitcoin's going to be one of those things. To have a whole Bitcoin is going to be like having a beautiful painting hanging on your wall.
I got an article. Please remind me of that. I want to wait until everybody gets here, but I got an article that goes exactly to that. And you've been talking for a long time about the status of holding an entire Bitcoin. Yep. You are years into talking about that. I have an article on that, but again, I'm going to wait. So if I forget, you guys feel free to remind me. I want to go through that because now, that's something George has been saying for years, but now all of a sudden I'm seeing that out there in the world. So, and it's getting tougher and tougher. I mean, Bitcoin's over $100,000. There's a generation of people that would rather have a Bitcoin than a house. That's what's happening right now. So, and that generate.
You want to hear something crazy? So at one point in time, I was up to 12 houses. I won't tell you how many Bitcoin I'm up to, but I started treating them like houses.
Yeah.
Freaking Sadler said this. He goes, they always pay the rent on time. You never have to worry about somebody calling you to say that the drain flooded the house. And these are all things I've had happen to me. A tree landed on the house. Again, things that have happened to me. These are you just buy it and you sit there and you look at it and you watch it appreciate. That's
right. And it's a long-term thing. And, depending, I know a lot of the people listening here got in a long time ago. And I know some of you are brand new also and everything in between. But, if you've been in for a while, even just this bull run, we ran from, we were at 15,500 in December of 2022. Now that's 2.5 years ago, but now we're over 100,000. We've been as high as 112,000. I think we're going much higher, but we'll ask you guys what you think. All right, we're at 24 likes. We need help so the stream can live.
Let's see how it goes before I like it, Tom. Just so you know,
you're
still up in the air.
You're holding out to see how the
hold out.
I'm counting on your support, George.
Just holding out right now.
I'm going to
So far, good.
I'm going to put this question out to everybody because I was unable to answer it all day long. IRIN was up huge today when everything else was red. And they did not put out a press release. They did not file anything with the SEC. I went through stock twits, every comment everywhere. I looked everywhere I knew how to look. I don't see any new information. And yet they just drastically outperformed all the rest. They were the outlier. Everything was red. And they actually finished near their lows of the day, up 6.8%. They were up over 10% for a lot of the day. So what is going on with IRIN? It was high volume trading. It was, and it was, I don't know. I can't answer it. I would love to hear theories on that because, obviously I'm thrilled. That's one of my big positions, but I don't know why. I don't know why it went up. It's a mystery. Larry said, I got in reasonably and I am not selling at all, ever. And there's a lot of people like that, Larry. There's an all-time high of long-term Bitcoin holders right now. So that list is growing. So effectively what those people are is all that Bitcoin's off the market, right? So the amount of Bitcoin actually on chain on the market that's available for trade is dwindling and dwindling. And when I go through the list of companies that's going to be buying and treasuring Bitcoin, you're going to see I don't know what the day is. I don't know what the week is. I don't know what the month is, but I believe there's another giant leg up to this run. Let's do a poll. Ask you the same thing we asked members.
Do you think the war is kind of softening the price on Bitcoin right now in crypto, Tom?
I think that it's uncertainty. There's uncertainty out there. I think it was worse a couple of days ago, and always uncertainty isn't good for anything. So, yes, I think that's a piece of the puzzle here. I think this pullback this week is just a total fake out. Having said that, I do think there's a really good chance we'll retest 100,000, and I'll show you the one day when we get there. Thank you, Sour Melon Gaming is saying, hit the like button.
Okay, I'll do it. I'm going to hit it.
Do it.
I did it.
All right. Where were we? Before I rudely interrupted. Oh, I want to put this poll up. Okay, so I will tell you. Will Bitcoin reach 200,000 in this bull cycle? I put in 2025 or 2026. If this takes a little, the natural order of things would, the peak of this bull cycle, if it mirrored all the previous ones, would be somewhere in late 2025. But I think it's going to go on into 2026. Later, we'll even talk about why I think it's going to go on into 2027, 2028. So I think we're in a different time. MetaPlanet said IRIN was a top pick by an analyst on Fox Business yesterday. So, I mean, maybe it was as simple as that. That's a big shout out. I don't know. Thank you, MetaPlanet. I'm just looking to see if anybody else saw any other reason. Oh, yeah, and Sour Melon Gaming also said the same thing. IRIN was mentioned on Fox Business yesterday as a top pick. Wow, is that all it takes to get one of these things to run? I mean, that's how irrational the market is. But you know what?
People.
I'm glad that there's probably a lot of people that didn't even know what a Bitcoin miner was. So thank you to whoever it was that mentioned them. And hopefully they went into a little detail and explained what's going on to bring some more investors into this space, because I think people are making I think people are missing one of the big opportunities over the rest of the next year or couple of years directly in cryptocurrency and in the Bitcoin miners. And it's not, and you got to do your due diligence, right? Because I don't think every single one of these is going to be a winner, but the ones that I hold, I feel very confident about, with the exception of one, which I'm losing confidence by the day, which is Bitfarms. But I'm going to go through an analysis that I did. So for those of you on Tuesday, we talked about me potentially selling all my Bitfarms. I did not do that, and I'm going to give you a specific reason why, as much as I want to at this point. I didn't do it, and I'll go through later exactly why that was, because at this point, Bitfarms is a real conundrum at this point, because Riot's going to sell the rest of their shares. They have somewhere between 70 and 80 million shares left to sell. Bitfarms has had very low volume, so I think they've probably not managed to sell very much of it this week at all. So that's a lot of downward pressure, and it could take a long time, but it is trading so far under what all the rest of the Bitcoin miners are trading by several different metrics. But I'm going to show you one in specific that just says to me, you know, I'm going to look back and realize that I sold Bitfarms at the absolute bottom, and I don't want to do that. And Gary said, Iron, nothing concrete announced. There have been a number of top stock advisors recommending Iron recently. So I guess it's just a little hype on Iron, and it made a big difference, because instead of being down 2, 3, 4 points, they were up almost 7 points. So that's a big swing on the day.
I see a short report coming.
Let's go to that article, George, before I forget about it. I want to find the one. Sorry, guys. It takes me a second. I have a lot of tabs open at the top of stuff that I want to talk about. So I just got to find the specific. All right, I'm going to have to keep looking and bring it up later, because I can't find it right now, but I will absolutely find it. So let's go through, while we're waiting for that, I want to go through some of the Bitcoin adoption that's going on. I'm going to start with a list that I've been putting together. And I'll tell you, this is not 100% all comprehensive list. I've just been kind of jotting these down as I see articles. These are companies, I'll go to the chart right now. There's companies starting to create a treasury. Most of them are borrowing the money, or straight debt or convertible debt, some at the market offerings. And what they're doing is, the vast majority of them are buying and creating a Bitcoin treasury. But I also have a list of companies that have spent some significant money doing an XRP treasury. There's a few that have done an ETH treasury. There's one that's done a Solana treasury. But the big winner by far is Bitcoin. And then in second place, it seems like a lot of people are starting. I have 3 examples of publicly traded companies that are raised money to create an XRP treasury. But the Bitcoin number is overwhelming. You'll see on this list, this is every single one of these, other than Strategy, right? Strategy's the big dog in this space. This list says 582, but you're going to see after this week's purchases, they're at 592,000 Bitcoin, almost 600,000 Bitcoin. And they're going to buy, they still have about 20 billion left in various forms of equity, including their at the market offer to continue to buy Bitcoin. And they've told us they're going to buy Bitcoin forever. But beyond that, Metaplanet, and I know there's some people here invested in Metaplanet. Metaplanet now has, this says 8,888, but they just bought enough to get themselves up to 10,000 Bitcoin, making them the 9th largest holder of Bitcoin of any publicly traded company. So the Metaplanet is now a top 10 holder of Bitcoin. But oh, by the way, that's nothing, because they have $5.3 billion that they are going to raise, all of which is going to be used to buy and treasury Bitcoin. So, I mean, that is so many multiples bigger. A lot of the companies on this list, what they're planning on doing with Bitcoin is many, many multiples larger than their whole entire business, which means essentially they're becoming a proxy on Bitcoin, just like MicroStrategy did, right? MicroStrategy for year after year after year was approximately a $1 billion market cap company. It's now a $100 billion market cap company, and the only difference is the nearly 600,000 Bitcoin that they own. So, you know, I would see the same thing happening to Metaplanet. Now, you gotta do the math on some of these and see how they're trading versus net asset value, Bitcoin to their equity, and, you know, all that kind of stuff, because some of these are dramatically different. Some of these look like a great big bargain, and some of them look like maybe they've already run up a little bit much. But you can see I've got $33 billion, and I've got 5 or 6 more this week that aren't on this list. I haven't added them yet because I want to go through and show you them one by one. All right, 42 likes. Let's do this thing. Let's get to 100 likes, if you would be so kind. If you just got here, if you have not, hit the thumbs up or the like button. That is all we ask. Let's get to some companies that are buying Bitcoin. And this, I'm going to start with a big one who's already on this list. If you look at Semler Scientific, this is a very, very small company. They have 4,449 Bitcoin. They have another, as of last week, they had announced another $100 million of fundraising they were going to do. But now they've come out with this. This was today. Semler Scientific investors cheered by new hire and lofty Bitcoin acquisition goals. The company's roughed up shares are higher by 14% in a down market following the late Thursday announcements. So Semler Scientific Thursday evening announced the hire of Joe Burnett as director of Bitcoin strategy. So that's basically what Michael Saylor is now at Strategy, or what, AKA what used to be MicroStrategy. So they've hired an individual that this is his sole purpose. The company also announced Bitcoin acquisition targets of at least 10,000 coins by the end of this year. Remember, they were at around 4,400. So they're looking to get to 10,000 by the end of this year and 105,000 Bitcoin by the end of 2027. Now, this is a company, this is a $470 million market cap. So they're looking to have $10 billion worth of Bitcoin. So, and I see Metaplanet, one of our members is saying Metaplanet will have 210,000 Bitcoin by 2027. There's no doubt Metaplanet, these two, I think, have and this is, talk about fluid. I mean, this announcement came out last night. So, you know, all of a sudden you've got Metaplanet, which has been coming on strong, buying a lot of Bitcoin, and they've got plans to buy more. And now you've got Semler Scientific, a very small company, you know, a $400 million company, and they're looking to buy, you know, 100,000 Bitcoin over the next couple of years. So that's some pretty massive adoption. Then we got Kindly MD is raising another $51.5 million for Bitcoin treasury strategy. All right. Let me get to Jeff. Thank you very much, Jeff, for the super chat. Much appreciated. let's see, is long Bitcoin, short miners optimal strategy? Mara and CleanSpark stock have almost acted inversely to Bitcoin since the original run-ups late in 2024 and early 2025. Jeff, my opinion is, and of course, you know, this is not financial advice, this is my opinion. I think that was a trade that was on for about a year, and I think people are going to be unwinding that trade. So that's just my personal opinion. I think the companies, particularly the two you mentioned, Riot, in addition to that, the companies that have large hodl stacks, and remember, Marathon has almost 50,000 Bitcoin. So all these companies we're talking about, Marathon's got more Bitcoin than all of these companies right now. So other than obviously Strategy has, you know, almost more than 10 times as many Bitcoin, but Marathon's the second largest corporate holder of Bitcoin with almost 50,000 Bitcoin. Riot is next with almost 20,000. CleanSpark has over 12,000. And we just saw Metaplanet get to 10,000. So that puts them in the top 10. And I have no doubt, I think, you know, Metaplanet has their sights set on being number 2. It's going to be very hard for them to catch and pass MicroStrategy, but they're all in, and it looks like they're going to try to get to number 2 on that list. But the Bitcoin miners, so to your point, Jeff, I think that trade was on all year last year. People were shorting Marathon, Riot, CleanSpark, several other of the Bitcoin miners, but those in particular, which have reasonable market caps, you know, between $2 and $5 billion, those were roughly 30% short all year last year. So for companies of that size to be that short, that's massively short, and they're starting to unwind. CleanSpark started first. Their short position went down like 15% month over month last month. So we'll wait and see what's happening this month. But I'm not expecting that. I'm expecting this to be a good year for several of the Bitcoin miners, and I'm going to put it 2 groups. Group number 1, the Bitcoin miners that are hodling and have a stack of Bitcoin, because I believe Bitcoin will continue to be bullish this year. And number 2, the Bitcoin companies that are still mining Bitcoin but have diversified into the high performance computing / AI data center energy world. Those companies that actually get contracts. And those contracts need to be $1 billion or more. We've seen a few companies really take off, but they're with announcements of $7 billion, you know, high performance computing contracts, or, you know, $15 or $20 billion. And so far, the 2 that I've seen explode, it's both been with, those contracts have been with CoreWeave. So there's a lot of other people looking to move into this space. There's 2 opposite narratives. Everybody's running around saying they got nowhere to put their high performance computing machines, but yet you've got 3/4 of the Bitcoin miners building out infrastructure and they can't get a contract. So we're going to see if the rubber hits the road and they start getting contracts in 2025 and 2026. If so, I think their stocks will do well. If not, companies that have stopped growing their Bitcoin mining business, that have stopped doing monthly reporting on their Bitcoin mining, if they don't get AI contracts, then what's the investment thesis there at this point? So a lot of different opinions. We see CleanSpark is the best at being the worst. See, I think CleanSpark, operationally, I think they're absolutely fantastic. Financially, I think they do a good job. They said they're going to be at 50 exahash at the end of this month. Iron also has said they're going to be at 50 exahash at the end of this month, which is 10 days from now. So Marathon's already over 50 exahash. Those 3 companies have separated themselves even from Riot. Riot's a step behind them, and I think I kept this open because I think it's important to understand. So if you go to Riot, this is their most recent investor presentation. I own Riot. I like what they're doing. I think they continue to get better at doing what they're doing. I like the fact they've abandoned ship on this Bitfarms thing. That was a total quagmire, in my opinion, that they should have never been involved in. But if you look, one of the things that's going on with Riot, 2025 is not a year they're going to massively grow their Bitcoin mining exahash. Now, they've talked about getting to 100 exahash over the next 2 or 3 years, but that's very generic talk. You will see Q1 33.7, Q2 37. By the end of this year, their goal is only to be at 38 exahash. So you've got Marathon, CleanSpark, and Iron right now. By the June monthly operational updates, all 3 of those will likely be either very close to 50 exahash or over 50 exahash. Marathon's closing in on 60 exahash. So you can see those 3 have put distance between themselves and Riot, and that's just going to continue for the rest of this year. But having said that, Riot is in a rock solid 4th place on the Bitcoin mining side of things because the exahash drops off dramatically from there. The next closest company is Bitfarms with just under 20 exahash, and they're not even going to report anymore. So one of my issues with Bitfarms is they're not even going to do monthly operational report. There's 5 companies now that have quit doing their monthly operational reports. And I think in the case of Bitfarms and in the case of a lot of these, it's a combination of the fact that not that they've abandoned their Bitcoin mining, but they're not going to grow their Bitcoin mining for the indefinite future. And they don't want to be associated with Bitcoin mining because the stocks have performed poorly and they think that that's not helping them, that the high performance computing is what's going to help them. So time will tell who's right about that. But I just, it's important to see, like, don't be expecting giant leaps in exahash for Riot by the end of the year. They have allocated massive resources to high performance computing. And due to the scale of this company, I think they're one of the ones likely to get a contract. I think several of these companies will get a contract. A lot of, we know the lists that are fighting for them. And, a company like TeraWulf, they've cut off their plans at 13 exahash. And their cost per coin is one of the highest out of all of the Bitcoin miners. So they're they have shifted gears and they're all in on the high performance computing. But the thing is, they don't have any big contracts yet. So TeraWulf, in my mind, 100% of the future for their stock, in my opinion, since they're not even going to report their Bitcoin on a monthly basis, obviously on a quarterly basis, they'll give us all of their financial information. I think they're really leaning in and hoping that big things are coming in the high performance computing energy part of the business.
I hope it's coming.
Yeah, I mean, that's the key. A lot of these companies, if we go down, I'm going to go back here and just go down the list. If you go down our big board here, Riot, I'm talking about companies that have allocated anywhere from 250 megawatts to a gigawatt, which is a massive amount. To put that in perspective, last bull market, there was no company that even had that much energy in total. And now there's companies, 250, 500, 750 megawatts just totally dedicated. They're building out because the infrastructure is different for a Bitcoin, to put in ASIC machines versus high performance computing AI machines, which is basically the NVIDIA chips. So they're allocating massive portions of their infrastructure. So you've got companies like Riot. CleanSpark is still a pure play Bitcoin miner. They are doing zero. They've spent $0 on diversifying into high performance computing. And they have said it is their intention to spend $0 going forward. Also, I will mention, by the way, they noted they have not done any stock dilution to raise money since November of 2024. So that's now 7 months in a row of no stock dilution, because I know a lot of you guys are concerned about stock dilution. 2024 was the year of ridiculous stock dilution for a lot of these companies, but that valve has pretty much turned off almost across the board. You're seeing some companies raise some debt or convertible debt. So CleanSpark's not one of the companies, but Iron, they're allocating a large percent of their resources. Now, this is why I hold Iron, and I feel good about it. They have a very low cost per coin. They make money. They were the first company to be profitable this cycle because their cost per coin is so low. So they're a very efficient miner. They also ramped up. CleanSpark and Iron ramped up so much faster than everybody else. Obviously, Marathon's the biggest by far, and they've been growing all along for years. But Iron raced. Basically, if they come in at 50 exahash like they said they would at the end of this month, their trip from 5 to 50 exahash was very short. And CleanSpark's wasn't much longer. So, and on top of that, you know, they're looking to diversify and get big contracts. Core Scientific already has a big contract. So there's only one Bitcoin miner that has big contracts. It's Core Scientific. And they have not added, they're not going to add any more to their Bitcoin mining infrastructure. They have not in a year and a half. And I don't see them ever doing it again. They're free to change their mind, of course, but they've stopped doing their monthly operational report. They do on X every day tell us what they do. So at the end of the month, we know what it is, but we don't get all the rest of the details, their growth plans, because they don't have any growth plans. In fact, they've been shrinking in exahash for the last 12 to 18 months. Cypher has big hopes on the high performance computing. BitDeer has big hopes. TeraWulf's basically all in on the high performance computing. Bitfarms has now shifted gears in a major way. They ran up to just about 20 exahash. They were going to go to 35 exahash, and they said, no, pause. We're done allocating any money to growing our fleet. Now, they have a great fleet. It's a highly efficient fleet. They're very good Bitcoin miners, but they're not going to grow it anymore. They're taking all the money, all the cash flow from Bitcoin mining and putting it into high performance. So that's a big risk. And in my mind, the reason it's riskier for Bitfarms is they have less money and they're later to the game maybe than some of these other companies. HUT isn't basically an energy company. They're when the merger happens with Griffin, HUT won't mine Bitcoin anymore at all. Then you've got Hive that has some big growth plans this year, but they have high performance computing. And then you have Bit Digital, which isn't even a Bitcoin miner anymore. They've just switched everything over to high performance computing. So you can see this space has become highly dependent on the high performance computing / quote AI energy business. So
Tom, I have a question.
Fire away.
Do you think Bitcoin's going to hit 123 before the end of the year?
Going to hit 200?
123,000. Yeah, no, 123,000 this year.
Yes. My answer to that would be a strong yes. Why is somebody saying 123 is the top?
Yeah, no. Somebody's just asking if they thought we were going to hit it. Here's my thing, Tom. I think this is a game until that genius bill gets passed on the Congress side. I think after that genius bill gets passed on the Congress side, I think it's game on.
Right.
I think it's giddy up.
George was reporting live during our members only live stream. The Senate was voting while we were having our live stream. So we watched live as the 60th vote got cast, and that means it passed the Senate. Now it has to pass the House, which I think it will. And you're right. That's monstrous. If I can find it, I've got a couple things on that. So the U.S. Senate passes Genius Act to regulate stablecoins, marketing crypto industry win. The legislation to set rules for stablecoin issuers is the first major digital asset bill to ever clear the Senate, and now it moves to the U.S. House. So for the last 5 years, we've been talking about these types of bills, and we've done nothing. In addition to that, we had a Fed chair that was just, and this was a surprise because before Gary Gensler came in, everybody was hyping him up. He knew all about cryptocurrency and he was going to be great for crypto. He sued everybody that had anything to do with cryptocurrency. You know, and when I say he, I mean the SEC in his tenure. They were just anti-cryptocurrency. I don't think anybody would even debate that fact. Now you have a 180-degree reversal. Now we have an SEC that is crypto friendly. Now we've got the Senate passing what I said 2 years ago has to be the first thing. Once stable coins are recognized, and essentially I'm going to show you another article. Let me get to it right now.
I don't think Gary Gensler was against crypto. I think his decisions that he made was to slow it down, to make it so opportunities for a lot of people to get into it and do one thing and say another.
So his actions were against crypto, but you believe he was suppressing the price so that, let's say, for instance, him and his friends maybe could build out their positions. Theoretically, not.
Do you know his background and his experience? Absolutely. He knows everything about crypto.
That's why everybody was so excited when he came in, and then all of a sudden it was, what's going on? He's lawsuit against everybody that's got anything to do with crypto.
Right. And I don't think we'll ever see the end of this, but the SPF disaster, I think, is more sinister than you could ever possibly imagine.
Yeah, that's there's a lot we don't know about that.
And I think that thing unwinds its if I think, there's just little things that are still out there that could scare crypto and bring it down. But I honestly believe, the news that we've gotten lately is just positive.
It's just been all positive news. Now, other geopolitical news and that kind of stuff, there have been other things that are not positive. We'll talk about the Fed and what they're doing. I think I don't even know how to explain it in words. I think it's beyond ludicrous, and they're setting themselves up for a big problem, and they're going to do emergency rate cuts. That's what they're setting themselves up for. They've made this mistake more than once. They're doing it again, and I'm going to show you a couple of reasons that I point to specifically why, I think we're way behind. The United States is way behind the rest of the world on this, and they got to catch up. But on the flip side, on stablecoins, so compliant stablecoins will become, quote, the money layer of the internet. Stablecoins could find uses beyond that of crypto trading pair after the U.S. Senate passed the Genius Act. So the broker said stablecoins are likely to find wider uses beyond that of a crypto trading pair. Compliant stablecoins are in effect recognized by the U.S. government as the same as cash.
Yep.
That's why George is saying what he's saying. Once this gets through the House, instead of choke point 2.0 stopping the flow between fiat currency and cryptocurrency, this is going to bust the doors wide open, in my opinion. So there's so many pieces of news like this. Any one piece, like, to me, just even this one thing right here, this is a game changer. But there's 10 more past that, and there's 1,000 more to come. Let's end this poll. Will Bitcoin reach 200,000? Very, very split on this. Very close to even. 53% said we're going to get to $200,000 Bitcoin by the end of this run, somewhere in 2025, 2026. 47% think no, we will not get to 200,000.
Gary has a crypto degree from MIT.
Yeah, I mean,
trust me, it's bigger than you. In 5 years from now, I think we're going to be looking back saying, wow, what a ride.
And Gorilla is saying Gary Gensler prevented Galaxy from uplisting to the NASDAQ for 1,300 days. Got done in 30 days with the new SEC administration. This is what I'm saying. There's a 180-degree turn from anti-crypto to pro-crypto in the United States. And I think you can expect for the next 4 years, you can't tell beyond that. Who knows what happens? Every time an administration changes, policies can change. But for the next 4 years, this is the environment, and it's not changing.
BTC to 300K. Genius Act will render Visa and MasterCard useless. I'm telling you, I agree with that. I think Visa and MasterCard has a big problem on their end.
You're speaking George's language on that one, because we called that out like a year and a half or 2 years ago. We basically said, what's their business model to survive cryptocurrency? Those are two of the 15 biggest companies by market cap in the world. And I don't think they're going to exist, whether it's 10 years from now or 15 years from now. So, I'm not going to run out exactly and short them tomorrow, because these things take time. But
during the member stream time, we talked about this. Amazon and who's the other big company?
Amazon and oh, by the way, Walmart, the two largest retailers on the face of the earth, are accepting cryptocurrency for payment. So it has begun. And they specifically cited the fact that they want to avoid these ridiculous fees from Visa and MasterCard. That is their reason. Brett says, Tom, we're going to be lucky to see 150. So but yet the comment above that, Sour Melon Gaming says 300K. Say it, Tom. Now, no one would be happier than me. I'm sure we would all be equally happy if this thing runs up to 300K this time around. And Bitcoin does wild stuff. So this is extremely volatile stuff. And we have set up, we're complaining we're at 103,500, and a lot of people feel like it's a down day. It was a down week, but it's like we're now so complacent that 103 doesn't feel good. I mean, we were at 15 a few years ago. We were at 30, 40. I mean, these are numbers we didn't dream of. The peak of the last cycle was 69,000. We're drastically above that, even as we have these little pullbacks. And
I'm good. I have to say this because I haven't said this in a long time. I do have an insurance policy for my Bitcoin, and my insurance policy is a BSV. And I'm just letting everybody know, you insure your house, you should insure your crypto. And what I mean by that is, if you know of a coin that goes up when Bitcoin goes down, my advice is to insure your crypto.
Advice for crypto, advice for your whole portfolio, as diverse as you can be,
I know, taking out BSV, forms of. Trust me, I understand it, but I mean, I also feel that, I've got, yep. Hey, but you just never know. You just never know. That's why I have my insurance.
And it's not like you got to spend a lot of money on it.
Right. No, it's $34 right now.
Alexander, who was a member, said, I say 220K. And we got also a lot of people.
Bitcoin Cash, too.
Bitcoin Cash was on a rampage this week.
Yep.
So anybody who's in that did very well this week. So
there's a lot of coins out there that are alternate Bitcoin. I'm not saying BSV is the only one. Do your homework. When Bitcoin goes down, there's coins that go up. And probably there should be a coin called the inverse of Bitcoin.
Well, and you can buy puts on the Bitcoin ETFs if you want protection. If you own Bitcoin, a put on the ETFs is basically insurance on your Bitcoin. So yeah. Not recommending that, but just pointing it out. I got some more companies that adopted. The Blockchain Group added 182 Bitcoin, lifts its Bitcoin holdings to over $170 million. And the The blockchain group bought 182 Bitcoin for 17 million euros, $19.6 million, increasing the total holdings to 1,653. So they're just getting going, but $170 million is $170 million. But there's more. A South Korean biotech firm. So what's that got to do with Bitcoin? Nothing. Gets $183.3 million in funding to build Bitcoin treasury. By the way, the company is also preparing to list on public markets in the U.S. via a SPAC, Silverbox Corp 4. So for those of you interested in getting in early on this, if you think this is going to be a winner, they just raised $183 million to buy and treasury Bitcoin. So this is another example. And this is all. And the reason I'm pointing these out is these are companies raising. They haven't even bought the Bitcoin yet. These are all companies raising money so that they can buy Bitcoin. And to understand what a treasury is, that means they're putting it away. Right? They're not trading Bitcoin. They're not buying and selling. They're putting it into treasury. And they intend to buy and hold Bitcoin. Now, that doesn't mean forever, but for the foreseeable future, this is all Bitcoin that's coming off the market. And there's not very many Bitcoin. So
this is interesting.
What are you looking at?
No 2x about changing the block of Bitcoin to do a hard fork.
Oh, I don't know why they would do a hard fork on Bitcoin. You got an article you're reading?
Yeah. Brent said about it. It's complicated, so I'm not really. I got to understand it more.
Well, I know one of the big things, and I'm just going to tell everybody right now. I got an article on it. Project 11 raises $6 million to defend Bitcoin from the coming quantum threat. Okay, so some of what I'm about to say is my opinion, and some of it's just a fact. There is no quantum computer on this earth that's even in the neighborhood of being able to. So you'll see Project 11 is offering 1 Bitcoin to the first team to break an elliptic curve cryptographic key. The best quantum machine needs to be 1,000 times better, at least than it is right now, to even hope to do that. We are years and years and years away from that. And by the way, that won't break the blockchain. What people are worried about, so you guys can do your own research, but it's just a fact. Quantum computers can't disrupt the actual solving of blocks on the blockchain. So that's not even what anybody's arguing, although that gets lost because when you think, oh man, when you hear Bitcoin's going to get hacked by quantum computers, you're thinking the blockchain, right? But the way the Bitcoin blockchain works, a quantum computer can't break it, right? The blocks are solved every 10 minutes. So as I did a deep dive on this, and then I confirmed everything with several conversations with ChatGPT and Grok, and they both basically said, even if we get to where we hope we're going with quantum computers in the next 10 to 15 years, they will be unable to solve a block faster than the blockchain can. Because remember, we have an 850 exahash blockchain trying to solve the block. So the quantum computer has to be faster than that. And even a 10 or 15 year projection will have it be maybe 1/10 as fast as what that is right now. So there is no danger of the blockchain itself. What there is a danger of is your wallets, your Bitcoin wallets, right? And all crypto. That's the exposure, is you know, if they can solve some of these cryptographs that use certain, and they're nowhere near this. So to me, this is all FUD. And they're talking about we need a hard fork on Bitcoin for this. Well, we don't. We know that. So you guys can do the research. And Alexander said,
quantum, just so you know, quantum to me, the problem with it is the heat. And I believe it warps the results.
Right. So, and I'll just say Alexander saying quantum FUD is just that. It's FUD. So, and what George is talking about is most of the way that these quantum computers work, you have to get the temperature down to almost absolute zero on the Kelvin scale, and the amount of energy that takes, even on a small scale, to run the kind of computers they're talking about that have, you know, 1 million qubits. It's a fantasy. So, you know, maybe they'll have some breakthroughs over the next 10, 15 years that will turn it into a reality. But we're not living in a quantum world right now. I can just, that's my very strong opinion. And there's no, even the Bitcoin people don't think there's a threat of quantum computers actually breaking the Bitcoin blockchain. It's the wallets. And here's the thing. So you just change,
right? You
just update the wallets, right? And change your cryptography as the quantum computers, if they ever come online. They're really just theoretical at this point, although most people don't know that quantum computers are really just theoretical right now.
Well, and also, Tom, you can make another crypto for your wallet too, and you could actually put your crypto on a blockchain.
Yes.
And you can make it randomized too, by the way. I mean, it gets really complicated, but you can make it randomized too with multiple blockchains.
So I see some people debating this in the comments, and it's all about the wallets. It is all about the wallets, and that's something that we're still, but understand, we're still generations of quantum computers away from them being able to do this.
I have a feeling we will be dead before it is a problem.
I don't. Everything takes a lot longer than people think, right? We have all these high expectations. And, you know, if you reflect on the last 50 years, all the things we thought we would do, we really haven't done very many of them. So, you know, things take time. And I'll tell you who's the master of overestimating how fast things are going to get done. And it's part of this is just marketing, and it's worked for them. And I'm not disparaging him. Elon Musk is the king of this. He talks about stuff coming out. Oh, this is going to come out in 3 years. He knows it's going to be 10. But, you know, he gets it on the radar. He talks about it. He hypes it. He's done that with so many things. Right? I remember having an argument at Christmas dinner 2019 because we were reading an article. All your presents next year are going to be delivered by drones. This was from Amazon. We will be delivering 100% of our packages via drone for next Christmas. Okay, well, it's 6 years later, and they're delivering none of their packages via drones. Round it down to 0. I'm sure they are testing that at something dramatically less than 1%. So this is what I'm talking about. This kind of technology, it's not that it's not real, it's that it takes a long, long time. And quantum computing has dramatic problems. I won't go on about this anymore, but the error rate, like George is talking about, the heat, there's so many problems. They have to throw out the vast majority of data that they get from quantum computers. And they have to figure out, have we weeded out all of the errors? Because most of what it does is an error. So enough said on that.
And I'll just say one more thing. What happens if you're not in a clean environment and you get one piece of mold, one piece of dust, anything, microns?
One particle of any kind. So it's a part of why this cryptography that wants to use satellites, it's just not realistic. There is no way to get a particle from point A 150 miles up into the Earth's atmosphere to bounce off of a satellite back down to point B. The chances that they hit no particles at any point in between are zero. So it's just not.
Beam me up, Scotty.
Exactly. Well, and that's what they're talking about. If they could do that, and they're trying to do that, you could transfer information instantaneously. Instead of we're restricted to the speed of light. Now, for us humans, the speed of light's more than fast enough. We can't possibly tell the difference. But theoretically, if the quantum computers got to where they were going, they could transfer information instantaneously. Or predict outcomes instantaneously, and et cetera, et cetera. But again, that's off in the future. And, I never say never. Who knows where this all goes, but there's an awful lot of roadblocks. I like to go back to the fact that we went to the moon 50 years ago and we still can't get back. So, right. And the main reason for that is, we were at the peak of the Cold War, and we spent what would be an Apollo mission. I just looked this up. An Apollo mission. So it was the Apollo mission. Several of them landed on the moon. Each one of those in current day money would be $250 billion. So that's a huge investment. But more so than that, we have not prioritized that. We're not willing to take the risk of people dying. So there's just been a change in priority in humanity, and we're just way behind on that. So, there's lots of reasons. We were in a space race. The United States and the Soviet Union, both sides were willing to risk and do whatever it took to get there. But it's so hard to get back that we haven't been back since. We do plan on having 4 missions to the moon over the next 6 years. But even those are likely to fall off track. That's if everything goes perfectly from now until then. Anyway, I've gotten way off track here. Gone from the Bitcoin to the moon. We will all be lucky to see Cleanspark at $18. So we'll see. I mean, it's back down to 9. It was over 10. Let's get Cleanspark open. So to put things in perspective, in November of 2024, so that's a while ago now, that's 7 months ago, Cleanspark was basically at $18, $17.97. And in that time, it's quadrupled the amount of exahash it has, and it's down 50%. So is this due for a run? I think so. Right? They make a lot of cash flow their gross profit margin is good on Bitcoin. And, like I said, they're going to be at 50 exahash. They mine a massive amount of Bitcoin. And they haven't done any stock dilution. So since this day right here where it hit its all-time high, they've done 0 stock dilution. That's per their CEO saying that multiple times, including in the quarterly press conference. So they've done no stock dilution since then. Their stock's just down 50%. It's irrational. So Brett's saying, Brett, I know you're looking at those 87 days, and that is the typical time to the end of our bull market. I do think that this bull market is very different. And I think they've managed to stretch this out longer because they know the wave of adoption is coming. And if they can keep retail investors out, they're going to miss the whole thing. So, I might look back and be totally wrong. Maybe these things never run. But I think they're going to take longer than the normal amount of time to get to their peak. Having said that, I do think they're going to run in the next 87 days. I think will be good. And is it smart to take profits a long way? For most people, that's a solid plan. I don't feel like you ever make a big mistake taking profits. So yeah, you could kick yourself if you bought Bitcoin at $1 and you sold it at 100, you 100x'd. Yes, you're kicking yourself now because now it's $100,000. But we're not looking at those scenarios with these Bitcoin miners. And Robert's saying CleanSpark has 600 million shares authorized, which they do because they were running out of shares. They doubled the number of shares that they authorized last year by vote, and it was because they were running out. But the thing is, since they did that, they basically stopped issuing any new shares of stock. And they're getting to their 50 exahash, which is already paid for. Now, they will raise a little bit of money because I expect them to be more like 65 or 68 exahash by the end of the year. I think they're going to keep growing. Iron has said, listen, we're getting to 50 or 52 and we're pausing. So they've already let the market know. We are going to pause the growth of our Bitcoin mining fleet at that point, which basically is 10 days from now. They're going to be done growing and they're going to pause, not forever, but probably the rest of the year. So I think you'll see CleanSpark and Iron get very, very close, and you'll see CleanSpark pull back away from them as Iron takes a pause. And I have no problem with that strategy because that's with 50 exahash, they're going to be the third largest Bitcoin miner. They have the lowest cost per coin, I believe, out of all the Bitcoin miners. So they've got a great equation going. But I also like CleanSpark's equation, and I don't think you're going to see a lot of dilution. I think that these companies were forced into outrageous stock dilution in order to get where they're going. They had to change their business models, a lot of these companies. And, the CapEx that was required to get to where they are, they're not going to have to do in the future. Building out 50 exahash worth of infrastructure so that you can be fully vertically integrated, you only have to do that once. So they just did that. And that's what all the dilution was about. Yes, they'll have to upgrade their machines and their fleet as time goes by, but that's a much smaller number of what is a much bigger company. So I'm not saying there's no dilution ever coming, but I think it will never be at the magnitude that we just saw. This industry changed at a fundamental level, and they all had to react to it. But that's over. In my opinion. All right, let's just lower this a little bit and see if we get a little more optimistic. Okay, so new poll. We had a poll. Will Bitcoin hit $200,000 somewhere in 2025 or 2026, whenever the peak is? That poll was very close to 50-50. So I'm lowering that. What do we think about 175,000? And I will tell you, that is my price target. So I changed a year and a half ago, before the bull season ever started. I said, I think we're getting to 150,000 in this bull season. About 7 months ago, I said, you know what? I think I'm going to raise that to 175,000. So obviously, my guess is as good as yours. We're all just guessing. But from everything that I see, from the monumental amounts of adoption that have happened and are yet to happen, coming from every direction, there's still dozens of multi-trillion-dollar pools of money that have not invested their first penny in Bitcoin yet. So I think you will see all of that change in the coming years.
Vanguard.
There's $10 trillion, zero of which is in any cryptocurrency at all. So that's just one thing. How about, in the United States, we have 50 states that at the state and local level, you know how many retirement plans there are with billions and billions and hundreds of billions? You add them up, that's trillions and trillions of dollars. Globally, There's, I think you're going to start to see, just like the US said they're going to have a Bitcoin reserve, we have other countries that already have a Bitcoin reserve. And as some of the more wealthy countries get involved in this, that's going to be massive pressure. And again, if, let's say, the Saudis and the United Arab Emirates decide to go buy 1 million Bitcoin each, like the United States has talked about, that's 5% of the supply. So that's 5% here, 5% there, 5% there. If they put that in treasury or reserve, strategic reserve, there's another 3 million Bitcoin that are no longer available. I mean, we don't have that many Bitcoin available to trade on the market. So things will ramp up as the supply dwindles.
Master to 20K. I wrote the same thing. I hate Bitcoin miners.
Bitcoin to 300 saying 2026 will, of course, see a sizable drawdown, 50% or more. Anybody thinking different is set to be very disappointed. So we're going to have to agree to disagree. I don't think we're having any more crypto winters. So you guys can laugh at me a year and a half from now if I'm wrong, because I've been wrong many times before. But I just think, and it's not because yay Bitcoin. It's because there's an endless supply of money that is only just starting to move into Bitcoin. So whereas in the past, there was very little money in Bitcoin altogether and very little of the world's wealth that was willing to invest in Bitcoin. So as that continues to grow and grow and grow, Bitcoin's still a tiny asset compared to the amount of assets in the world. So as all the rest of these assets gain exposure to Bitcoin, for instance, you do not have you have Tesla. One of the S&P 500 companies has invested in Bitcoin. So 10 years from now, are probably all 500 of them going to be invested in cryptocurrency? Something like that. Yes. So you can't even list the adoption that's coming, the amount of Bitcoin. And there's only, we say there's 21 million Bitcoin, but we know something like 3 or 4 or 5 million are lost forever. Once they're lost, you don't get them back. So, let's say for argument's sake, there's 17 million Bitcoin. When you've got countries that may have 1 million in treasury on their own, I mean, I think there's going to be buying pressure now. The altcoins, they may have altcoin season. They may have crazy run-ups because they're so much smaller market caps, right? Bitcoin's a $2 trillion market cap. If you've got an altcoin that's a $6 million market cap, that might 100x and then it might crash. No question about it. So Bitcoin to 300K, if you're talking about like altcoins and that kind of stuff, that I could very well believe. I think there'll be just a few coins that are the big winners, and the rest of the coins will continue to be very, very, very volatile. But other than that, I think you're going to start to see cryptocurrency act like the equity markets, act like gold. It's just going to go up and to the right, which the stock market's done for the last 100 years.
Do you think the stock market's closer to the top than it is at the bottom?
Like from now until the end of time?
Well, in the next 10 years. I mean, our lifetime. So just say the next 30 years.
I think the market will continue to go up. I will tell you.
Do you think it'll double from here?
This is what I'm going to say. I remember reading a story, and time flies, so this was a long time ago. But I think it was in 2008 or 9 when the market really tanked. The Dow got down to $6,700. And somebody put an article out, the Dow will hit 20,000, in X number of years. And I looked at that and thought, like, what planet is that person living on? Because that is just ridiculous. And if we look right now, the Dow's at 42,000. So it went from 6,700 to 42,000 from 2008 to 2025. Now, that 6,700 was a crash, right? It had run up to 14,000 and then it crashed. And it recovered. You know, that was a V-shaped recovery. That was one of the best buying opportunities. And we've had several of these. We've had 3 once-in-a-lifetime buying opportunities in the last 20 years. But we got wrecked, you know, right before them as well. So you got to take the good with the bad. So yeah, is the Dow going to be? And I don't really look at the Dow, to be honest. I focus on the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ, and then to a lesser extent the Russell 2000, which has lagged dramatically behind the others. So I'm actually invested in a leveraged play on the Russell 2000. I don't recommend leveraged plays. You guys got to do your own due diligence. You can get burned on those. But if you look at the behavior of the Russell 2000 versus the other U.S. indexes over the last 5 years, it is lagging behind drastically. And it's because we're in an ultra high interest rate, quantitative tightening part of our cycle. That is going to end. So I want to talk about that next, because I believe that's going to end. And obviously it didn't end. We just had a Fed meeting. They left rates the same. And they gave some indication that maybe we'll get 2 rate cuts by the end of the year. We'll see what happens. They're going to follow the data, yada, yada, et cetera, et cetera. The same old story. However, second, and I will find this article. I'm on hold until I find this, because I know I opened this article. Okay. Return of zero interest rate policy as Swiss central bank cuts rates. The return to zero comes as tariffs threaten to deflate nations with trade surplus, such as Switzerland and China. So you now have Switzerland at 0% interest. You now have Japan at 0.5% interest. You now have the United States. Let me refresh this. This is the Fed Watch Tool probability of a rate cut. We are at 4.5. The Swiss are at 0. Japan's at 0.5. We're at 4.5. I believe the European Union's at 2.5. Right? Nobody has an interest rate like we do. None of the major economies of the world. So we're just way lagging behind them. And yet with all of that, the next meeting isn't for another month and 10 days. And there's an 83% chance they're not going to cut rates again in that meeting. I believe at this point, the Fed is now failing. I think this is a policy failure. It's a failure to recognize the big picture. They look at inflation as the boogeyman, and it's they can't look past it. And they are missing the big picture in a big way, in my opinion. And it will cause a problem to the U.S. economy, and it will cause at some point for them to have to do an emergency rate cut, in my opinion, which they have done before by making this very same mistake and holding rates up and holding rates up. I mean, the rest of the world is not doing this. And there are countries that will go negative. Right? They'll have a negative quarter-point interest rate. So the Swiss are at 0 right now. Japan's at 0.5. So we'll see what you guys think about that, because this is another 50-50. So lowering this from 200,000 to 175,000 did not change the results at all. We are still 50-50 as to whether or not you guys think this bull market's going to get Bitcoin to 175,000. So let's end that poll.
Why didn't you tell me I look like a madman?
You look like a madman?
Yeah, with my hair.
This looks normal to me.
Great. You're saying I look like a madman all the time.
All right, that last one, George, so that you know, I just ended that poll. When I dropped it down to 175,000, it was still 50-50. So that wasn't low enough, but I'm doing a quick poll. Do you think the U.S. Fed is late in cutting interest rates? Yes, just a yes or no. Are we late? Understanding they're not going to cut them next month unless something catastrophic happens. There is no meeting in August, which means the earliest they're going to cut rates is September.
And for the people that say no, can you tell me why you feel that? I'm just curious. You know what I mean? I picked yes.
Metaplanet saying, y'all calling for 200K like everyone was calling for 100K in 2021. And we might look back. Listen, you might be right, Metaplanet. I'm looking at 175K. And I do think there's a gigantic fundamental difference between this cycle and the previous cycles. And that is, number one, the Bitcoin adoption is 10,000-fold what it was in the last cycle. And that still leaves us in the infancy of adoption. But number two, and more importantly, we are still in a high interest rate quantitative tightening part of the cycle. Last cycle, the Bitcoin halving, the presidential election, the rate cuts, the quantitative easing, those all happened right together at the same time. So we boomed right to the top of Bitcoin. Well, you've got two of those factors. There will be quantitative easing in the United States, and there will be rate cuts. Bitcoin hasn't gotten any of the benefit. Both of those things will be a massive pump to Bitcoin, in my opinion, particularly quantitative easing, because people are just, retail investors are hard pressed at this point. So, getting money into the market is going to make a big difference. So I think that's why this one's going to, in my opinion, everybody always says this time's different. And, most of the time it's not different. But I do think this will, in some ways this has been similar, but in some ways I think it's going to be different. I think it's going to take a longer period of time to get where we're going because of the Fed not lowering interest rates and not doing any quantitative easing here in the United States. So I think that's having a big impact on holding back. And Bitcoin's, doing great even in this environment. I don't think any of us will complain about Bitcoin over 100,000. But that's why I think there's a lot more run.
Tom.
Yeah, me too.
It's just amazing that there's people out there buying and selling their Bitcoin every day, making money, because it's like in a really good range.
Well, yeah, it's bouncing around in a good range. There's no doubt. So if you're swing trading or leverage trading up and down and you're doing it right, you're making a fortune. If you're doing it wrong, there have been people that have lost tens of millions of dollars. Individuals, a couple of people really got caught. They made big bets, and they were, the timing you don't have to be wrong by very much to lose, when you're 100x leveraging things, which is why I never ever do that.
And I have a Coinbase account with my Bitcoin, and you can get your transaction fees down to like absolutely, even on Bitcoin, absolutely nothing. It's like 0.002, I think. And because I've been doing that quite a bit, and it's only for us high rollers.
So MicroStrategy to 20K is pointing out that was before there was a 10-to-1 split. So adjusted for the split, it's really MicroStrategy to 2K. To be fair, to point that out. Larry is saying Riot $20 this time around, CleanSpark $22 this time around, for maybe selling quite a bit. I'll be taking profits at 20 for both of those. I can tell you that. I won't be out of my positions, but I will be taking profits for sure. That's a little bit more than a double from here for both of those. And I'm in two very different spots on those. I'm still deeply green on CleanSpark, but yet I'm in the red on Riot. So I bought a lot heavier in the bear market. Two things I really fixated on, one of which is doing well. The other one has tanked, which is Bitfarms. So Bitfarms has not been a good investment for me, and it just has not. But I'm going to tell you guys right now why I didn't sell it. I was going to sell all my Bitfarms and buy some combination of Hive and BitDeer. But as I analyzed all the numbers, there was a few things that scared me on this. I did, by the way, add to my Hive position. I added, so, you know, FYI, not financial advice, not that any of you care, but I bought some more XRP this week, and I bought some more Hive this week. So that's all I bought this week. But let me show you. First, I just want to sidetrack myself. Circle is at $240. This is up 677% since it IPO'd 2 weeks ago. So anybody that got in, you know, most people didn't. I think really for the open market, somewhere, see, it opened at around 69 on the IPO. So it technically it was targeting to IPO at 27 bucks. But the opening bid, it looks like, was 69. So to me, it was like, man, we're already double, triple. And then when it got to 100, I'm like, this is ridiculous. But even if you had bought it at 100, which was a quadruple in 3 days, you'd still be up 150%. So this is a sign of a few things happening. I think rotation, when you see, we're starting to see some SPACs coming back alive. We're starting to see, this is a $58 billion company now. This was one of the most successful IPOs in the last 4 years. And you're going to start to see more money moving into this higher risk stuff. So I think the rotation has only just begun, which is why I have gone long the Russell 2000, because that's where your small cap, high growth stuff is. But, you know, you hit a home run on Circle if you were in Circle. I wasn't. I missed the whole show, so shame on me. But I want to go to, what I want to look at is, so if you look at Bitfarms, it's at 77 cents. It's up after hours. I don't know why it's jumped up like this. Somebody let me know if they put out news after hours or if this is just very low volume nonsense. Even at 81 cents, this is horrendous. I'll show you the chart real quick, because just to understand how this went from my best position to my worst position. Right, so you look, the first thing that jumps out, this was at $2.76 in November. That was 6 months ago. It's at 77 cents right now, but that's not even the bad part. In February of 2024, so about a year into the bull market, Bitfarms was up to almost $4. So yeah, am I kicking myself I didn't sell at $4? Yes. Then it pulled way back and ran back up to $3.30. I still didn't sell. Then it pulled back and went to $2.76. I still didn't sell. I actually dollar cost averaged in. I have stopped. But I dollar cost averaged in a lot of the way down to the bottom here. I have not bought any Bitfarms in this area. And, you know, maybe I'll look back and go, wow, that was the greatest time ever to buy. But the reason I'm not buying right now is very simple. Riot has somewhere between $70 to $80 million of shares that it has filed with the SEC. It had 90 million. It's sold at least 10 million of those that we know of, maybe more, but it has filed with the SEC that it's selling all those shares. So there is sell pressure on Bitcoin indefinitely. You know, I don't know if that's going to take a month, 3 months, whatever it is, but Bitfarms just does not look good for as long as there's that much sell pressure. And if you go to the historical, you'll see their average volume. Why it's not showing that right now? Refresh to see if that shows up. Well, I'll show you. We'll go to historical data. So today was better than average, 13 million shares, but that's less. Their average volume a month ago was 20 million shares a day. And you can see, like, May 28th, 40 million, May 27th, 39 million, 28 million, 49 million, 31 million, 21 million. This fell off a cliff. Look at some of these days. 8 million shares, 9 million, 7 million, 11 million, 7 million, 13 million. So when you're selling less than the daily average, that leaves really no opportunity for Riot to be getting rid of their stock. And if they did, with selling pressure already, this would be tanking even worse, which is why I feel like for the short term, for a 90-day period, it's just not a good time to buy Bitfarms. But this is one of those self-fulfilling prophecies. We'll see what happens. I was going to sell it all and buy something else for the next 90 days. But now I'm going to show you the reason that I'm not going to do that. If you look at Bitfarms' market cap, they have a $432 million market cap right now. Find their... So here's their March 31st financial statements. Their book value is $665 million. Their market cap is $432 million. So if you look at that, they are trading at 0.66 their market cap. That is so outrageously low. I am not going to sell this and buy, like, for instance, I was looking to buy BitDeer, which has pulled back dramatically, and I think good things are coming for BitDeer. Oops. Deer. But if you look at BitDeer and you go to, now this is just one number. I understand there's a lot of numbers that you gotta look at the whole picture. But if you look at BitDeer, it's trading at almost 3 times its book value, whereas Bitfarms is trading at 0.6 its book value. So, you know, this is 5 times as expensive per share when you look at just the book value. Let's look at price sales. 6.5 times. So BitDeer's at 6.5 times price sales. If I go back to Bitfarms, it's at 1.7 price sales. So you can see this is already so unbelievably oversold. 77 cents is stupidity for this company. They've got 20 exahash. They're the 5th largest Bitcoin miner. Now, they've stopped reporting that, but they're the 5th largest Bitcoin miner, and I think they're the 10th largest by market cap. Their cost per coin is below the average of the network by far. So, and they're building out infrastructure, and they're not diluting their stock. So this company is in some kind of, and I understand, like, for the next 90 days, I don't see how it gets any better because you've got those Riot shares sitting out there, you know, like an anchor dragging this down. But
Seeker, you're so right.
But look at this balance.
You're in love with Bitfarms.
I'm frustrated with Bitfarms. It's my worst performing stock over the last 18 months, and it's not even close. I'm very disappointed in the stock performance. It has forced them to make some management decisions. They've made their own missteps. There's no doubt. I'm not going to give them a free pass. They've had a hostile takeover attack. They fired their CEO. I mean, they've swapped out numerous members of the board. Yeah, right. Their fifth CEO in the last 5 years. So I get it. Like now they didn't stick to their plan. They said they were going to get to 35 exahash in 2025. Now they said we're stopping at 20, period. And so they didn't do what they said they were going to do. And they're not putting out monthly operation reports. So I get that whole list. But then I look at this balance sheet and I go, 224 million in current assets, 85 million in current liabilities, only another 112 million in long-term liabilities. That's actually total of all liabilities. So you got $777 million of assets against 112 million of liabilities. This is not a company that's financially unhealthy. They have plenty of liquidity. They're not going anywhere. Now, maybe their stock's not going anywhere either. And that obviously has been the case. But this is a strong company. I don't like a lot of the stuff they've done. And I understand why their stock's getting punished. And I think it'll keep getting punished for the short term. But at some point, right, this is one of the better balance sheets in the Bitcoin mining world. It's not the best. Don't get me wrong, right? This doesn't, when you look to scale, if you look at the Marathon or Riot or CleanSpark, they're much, much bigger companies. They have much more liquidity. So I understand, but they're also, at this point, 10 times the market cap. So I said I wasn't going to go out a rant about Bitfarms, but I did anyway. And I'm going to go on the same rant about Hive and this is why I bought more Hive today. So I'll show you this one more thing.
They could make us suffer for this in these Bitcoin miners for a whole nother year, Tom.
I mean, who knows? So
I have a number where I will sell, but I'm not there yet.
Here's Hive. They're trading at 0.73 their book value. So their market cap, if you look at their market cap, it's $307 million. If I go to their financial statements, their equity's $434 million. This is trading for less than its book value. Again, here's a company. Look at this balance sheet. Current assets, $310 million. Total liabilities, $44 million. This is a bad company? This should be trading for less than its book value? I don't think so. By the way, they just increased their they just doubled their exahash in the last couple of months, and they plan on doubling it again between now and the end of the year. So this is one of the fastest growing Bitcoin mining companies. Again, you're looking at their balance sheet. It's rock solid. We're about to get the March 31st balance sheet in a couple of weeks. It's just undervalued.
So with Hive, what do you think the difference? What's their exahash right now, Hive?
They're at 11 point something. So let's go to the chart and see where everybody weighed in. So Hive is now at 10.4 exahash at the end of May. But if you go backwards, take a look at what Hive has done. In April, they were 7.3 exahash. In May, they were 6.4 exahash. Right, so they've gone from 6.4 exahash to 10.4 exahash. Subsequent to that, they've put out press releases. We should be able to find them. I'm not going to be able to get to them from here, but I think they're at 11.8 exahash now, and they've said they're going to get to 25 by the end of the year. So this is they are growing right now. They're in a giant growth spurt. They're growing faster than anybody. all the growth they've had so far, they already paid for. Now, are they going to have to pay to get to 25 exahash?
Uh-oh.
Yes.
Uh-oh. No, not again. When do you think that's going to happen?
I think sometime they're going to make one of two decisions. If they can get debt, they're going to go get debt. And I will tell you, let's go to these two articles because so one was last Friday. Just a second. Iris Energy raised $550 million of debt last Friday. Right? These are convertible notes. So that's a week ago. BitDeer just raised $330 million of convertible senior notes 2 days ago. So Hive, if they can, they'll go borrow the money. And I think they can because this is the fifth or sixth Bitcoin miner that has borrowed money in the last 3 months versus using their at-the-market offering. So there are clearly companies willing to lend to the Bitcoin miners to build out their infrastructure. So what I'm hopeful is that Hive borrows that money. And you can see from the strength of their balance sheet, if they're already, their assets, their current ratio is 10-to-1. And their total ratio of assets to total liabilities is 10-to-1. I mean, they're ridiculously strong balance sheet. So they got room to go borrow $300 million and go get to 25 exahash. They don't need to dilute themselves. And I hope they don't.
I pray they don't, please. Well, it's kind of rough to do at a $2 stock.
Well, right. And at a stock, when you're valued at less than your book value, you do not want to be using an at the market offering. In fact, you shouldn't. You should put your plans, you're better off putting your plans on hold and disappointing the investors that way than diluting at less than your book value. Right. It's crazy. And that's where Bitfarms and Hive both find themselves. So I think there will be a turnaround because I think the rest of every single press release from Hive for the rest of the year, I think is going to be extremely positive. So if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. That's how investing works.
Mm-hmm. I've been wrong more than I've been right, though, Tom, except in crypto.
Well, fortunately, what you've been right on, you've been so right on that it has outweighed what you've been wrong on.
You knuckleheads on the chatting, I wouldn't have bought my XRP and kept buying it.
I will say, and I shouldn't say everybody because that's never fair, but the loudest voices in the chat 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, when George was buying XRP, people were laughing at him in the chat, calling him an idiot, a moron. What are you even doing on here? And well, who's laughing now? Right, because he was buying it at 30 cents.
If I didn't do that, I probably would have already jumped off the Brooklyn Bridge.
MicroStrategy to 20K. Bitfarms is going to $60 after their 1 to 100 reverse stock split. No.
87 likes. Come on, Tom.
Let's go. We're already in overtime and we didn't get to 100.
Oh, my goodness.
If you haven't liked the channel, do us a favor. Get us to 100 likes. There's a lot of retail investors are very disenchanted with Bitcoin, which makes no sense to me. The interest is low. And the Bitcoin miners. It's the this run up in Bitcoin is the institutions. It's not the retail investors. They're nowhere to be found. Now I understand
they got no money.
Well, maybe that's the reason. And that's high interest rates, quantitative tightening, and we're suffering the inflation from 2 years ago, 3 years ago that was astronomical. But it's too late to keep rates up now. We're having normal inflation. So, you don't need to lower inflation. The United States average inflation rate over the last 50 years is 3.7%. We've been under that for like a year and a half. And they won't lower interest rates. Now, their target rate, they skew the conversation by saying, well, our target rate is 2%. Well, that's great, but the last 50 years says you guys don't hit your target rate. Maybe you need to adjust your target rate.
Almost to 90, 11 to go. I'm trying to, any closing thoughts, Tommy?
Let me see if I missed anything on my list that was big. Oh, well, I think this is worth a parting conversation. Find this.
Hang on, I'm going to go change.
First of all, real quickly, the U.S. listed Bitcoin miners, which is the list that we talk about, has hit their all-time record high as a percentage of the total Bitcoin network. So the combined hash rate of the 13 Bitcoin miners that JP Morgan is following has risen 99% year over year, whereas the entire Bitcoin network has only risen 55%. So that's almost double. They're doubling what the network is doing. And that means this is an all-time high. The miners now account for 31.5% of the global network. So that's an all-time high, and I think it will continue to rise. So that should be good news for miners. That's not what I was looking for. Take a quick look at this. MicroStrategy this week bought another 10,100 Bitcoin. In 1 week, they bought as much as that would, just this purchase alone puts them in the top 10 Bitcoin holders. And this is just 1 week. They now have 592,100 Bitcoin. So it's only a matter of time before they go over 600,000 Bitcoin. So, you know, you got 600,000 Bitcoin here. You got 600,000 Bitcoin over in the ETFs. You got the United States talking about buying maybe a million Bitcoin over a 5-year period. We'll see what happens. That's very far from a done deal. So looking.
We're not going to make it.
We're not going to get there.
No.
It's a shame. It's a shame. We need 8 more likes. This will be the last thing. Elon Musk X to offer investments and trading soon. Soon you're going to be able to live your whole financial life on the platform. That from CEO Linda Yaccarino, if I'm pronouncing that right. Sorry if it's incorrect. So they're looking to become a full-service investment platform in addition to what they're already doing. So X will, quote, soon allow users to make investments or trades on the platform. X partnered with Visa to develop X Money earlier this year as a digital wallet and peer-to-peer payment service. The development forms part of Elon Musk's ambition to turn X into a super app, akin to the Chinese app WeChat. So not familiar with that chat, but it sounds like it's an all-purpose, all-encompassing super app. So that's what's going on. So that's more adoption. Right here's more cryptocurrency.
The scams that are on Twitter, I just can't think. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There's a big difference between you. If they roll out a platform you can use, that's very different than, you know.
No, you just give me a link. I'd be good with that.
Follow the link and give me all your Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Really, it'll be great.
What a great, you know what I mean? I'd be okay with that.
Seeker, thanks for summing it up. He said, thanks, Tom and George. We laugh, we fight, we cry, all good in the grand scheme of things. That's life. And that's the bottom line. I would sing along if I could. So 98 likes.
99. One more to go.
Come on.
We can do it, Tom.
Well, while we're doing that, let's just take a parting look at. So we're hanging around over 103,000. I should go to the 1 day because I never did get there. The reason I am a little bit worried that we could have a little more downside is this line at 104 was holding very nicely. But it looks like today's daily candle is going to close below that. It's not over yet, but if it does, I think once again, that puts, and we just did this, we just retested 100 a couple of weeks ago. So we could very easily retest 100 again. I feel strongly that will hold. I can't say that with any certainty, but I think that line, this line at 104 has been pretty strong. This line at 100, we bounced right off of. So maybe we're going to do that again. But ultimately, all of this, I believe, is on our way back to a new all-time high sooner than later. So I'm still very optimistic. Do you think the U.S. Fed is late in cutting interest rates? So almost 3/4 of you feel the Fed is late. And we need one more like the way I'm looking at it. Did you save yours, George, to be 100?
No, I already did mine.
Well,
somebody pulled it off, pulled it back. You guys.
100. There it is. Thank you very much.
We got a bunch of funny guys.
Well,
don't tell them.
Thank you, George.
Thank you, guys. It was a lot of fun.
Good times. Thank you to all of our members, of course. Thanks to all of our subscribers. And everybody have a fantastic weekend. To the members only, we will see you guys Tuesday after the market closes. Have a great weekend.